hello everyone. As we speak, it's London Edtech Week in the UK. So to celebrate, we're putting out an episode of the Edtech Podcast every day this week. You'll be hearing from a mixture of amazing teachers and educators, Ministries of Education, EdTech companies, sleep specialists, and much, much more, recorded all over the world. If you enjoy listening, give us a shout out on Twitter at Podcast Edtech and share the London Edtech Week hashtag Edtech Week LDN. Normal service resumes next week. Enjoy! I'm really thrilled because I'm here with Francis, Jim, Tuscano, the legacy teachers from the Global Teacher Prize Network. And Jim is from a school in the Philippines. So welcome, Jim.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be with you for the podcast and everything.
Well, Jim, can you explain to our listeners a little bit about your work in the school and whereabouts, the setting in the Philippines, what type of school it is, what your challenges are, and how you go about doing your teaching and learning?
So I teach in Xavier School, San Juan. So it's an all-male school, all-boys school right in the city in Metro Manila. I am very, very blessed that I teach in a very progressive school. So we offer an IB DP program at senior high, and we've been doing a lot of innovation. 2 years ago, I started to become an administrator. So I currently work as the head EdTech coach for the whole school. So I left the classroom, but I started working with classroom teachers to focus on technology integration. On the coming school year, I will focus on the grade school as the EdTech coordinator. So basically, we're a one-to-one iPad school, an Apple Distinguished School. I myself is an Apple Distinguished Educator. My work will now focus on integrating project-based learning, makerspace, technology, and STEAM.
What kind of age group are we talking about in terms of the children there?
Well, age group starts around 4, 5 years old until 11 to 12. So it's like kinder to grade 6. We have a junior high school and senior high school. That's how we call them in the Philippines. But right now, I'm focusing more of the kinder to grade 6.
Okay. And then the teacher prize winner from last year, Andrea, a lot of that was about creativity and the arts. So do you kind of cover STEM and the arts? Is it integrated, or is it more for if children or their parents are focused on being really immersed in STEM, they would choose that school?
Yeah, so that's the main challenge right now. That's why we're doing STEAM.
Mm-hmm.
But the big idea right now in our school is that creativity should be seen in across curriculum in different subjects. We don't believe in the left brain, right brain creativity versus the logical, mathematical way of thinking. We feel like every student is a maker, every student is a creator, whether it's knowledge or maker, thinking of something. So we believe that creativity, whether it's in arts or whatever form it is, in STEM, robotics, we just believe that innately all students are creative and that should be nourished, fostered in every subject possible.
And then how about yourself? How did you come into being a teacher and then getting into being an EdTech coordinator?
Yeah, so interesting. I graduated with a degree in philosophy,
Okay.
and then I was just thrown into the classroom. This is a very different setup. In our school, we have some deregulation from the Department of Education. So we're a private independent school.
Okay.
So we have that certain level of accreditation where it's okay to hire teachers who do not have education background, but will have to study education. So I did some education courses, and then on my first year, I taught the religious and values education, a very traditional subject, because I didn't know what I'm going to do with a philosophy degree. And then I found myself getting bored of the traditional teaching. That's when I got to experiment with the iPad. So we had some pilot project. I jumped into that pilot project, and from there on, I focused because that's the reality of our students in the Philippines right now, especially my school. They speak technology. They live in a digital world. And if you want to connect with them, you need to speak their language. So from there on, I focus on improving learning, technology. I've done some research, classroom based research while teaching. And those things actually helped me to become a better classroom teacher And then my principal was like, maybe it's time for you to step out of your classroom and try to work with other teachers. So my focus right now is professional development for teachers. But one thing that I require with my teachers right now is I do coaching. I also do team teaching so that I can still go back to the classroom and team teach with them.
And you mentioned philosophy there.
Yeah.
So, what's your favourite type of philosophy or philosophy that you studied?
I would really go back to Marcel. A lot of very
Is that like the meditations?
no,
No, that's someone
they're
else.
more of the contemporary ones, looking into the meaning of life, those things, making sense if life has meaning, which come first, existence, essentialism, extensionism. So things like that. But here's the thing: after graduating with philosophy degree, I found myself not leaving the thoughts and everything. It's just that all of those thoughts become clearer and realistic once you dive into the real world.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like you're bringing some of the learning from philosophy into your work in technology and teaching? Because more and more we hear that in the age of artificial intelligence, actually, people with an understanding of ethics and philosophy will do well.
Oh, that's a great point. So, something that I would like to talk about, what I'm doing right now is since I have an experience in the humanities, right? I believe that technology and the right mindset of the person, right? Humanity itself could really, really flourish. So, I focus on when teaching about kids about STEM or robotics, for example, I would try to bring in empathy, the skill of empathy. What makes us human? The idea of what is the universal good. I mean, like, there's edtech for good. So the big idea also is that AI will be there. It's something that is bound to happen. In the Philippines, it's still not happening, but it's something that will really, really happen. And what I remind the teachers that I train is that if you teach like the way Google or YouTube or even Khan Academy teaches, right, you'll be replaced. That's my firm belief. But if you teach kids how to be humane, how to be human, to have the skills of empathy, collaboration, all those soft, essential skills that AI will not be able to teach, you'll become still relevant to your students. So that's a big idea that I've been pushing, especially in the Philippines. I've been speaking conferences, working with the Department of Education. Right now, to be honest, we're playing catch up as a country in terms of ICT. We're a developing country. Access to technology is still a big issue. There are pockets of innovation, but to disrupt the whole education system, we need a larger, like systemic disruption. But then again, some schools would really venture on technology too much so that it becomes the focus, not learning anymore, not the 21st century skills. And I would often remind them that you need to chill on pushing those technology
Yeah, don't get
tools.
swing from one to the other.
Yeah.
What's the big focus for the government in terms of education at the moment? Is there any particular policy that's interesting that's happening?
A month ago, the Department of Education of the Philippines did what a big, big national conference on ICT. It's called the Digital Rise. And I think that was a very creative way of saying that, hey, we're going to rise up as a big education system through taking advantage of the digital tools that we have right now. That's one thing. There are other things right now. We just a few years ago, three transitions to K to 12, or one of the few countries before that where we only had 10 years of basic education. And making sense of senior high school, how it connects to higher education, it's still a big challenge as of the moment. I think there is a continuous discussion about what's the relevant curriculum for higher education since we've inserted 2 years of senior high school. So those things in those places we try to play catch up, right? But what I like is that there has been solid proof that we are going towards that way. That's why I'm working a lot really to help with the Department of Education. Despite being in an independent private school, I've been working with them on building a STEAM curriculum, not just on a national level, but even on school policy level, like what does it take to have STEAM, robotics? Can we build our own makerspace even if we don't have funding? What kind of training do our teachers need for those kinds of projects?
And then what are some of your favoured tools to bring into, whether it's the classroom or professional development, training? Are there any particular things that you keep going back to that might be considered EdTech?
It's pretty hard to answer. On my mind right now, I have a lot of technology tools. A simple one, okay? It's not an app. Well, it's an app, but it's across all. It's a camera.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really believe that technology should level off, right? The playing field for all learners, whether they're young or adults. And sometimes you have students who are disadvantaged. And I feel like personalizing learning, differentiating learning, it will happen if we have the power of the camera app. Like when students can record what they're saying, be more transparent about it. So I really love the camera as one of the most or the simplest tool that we can have. They can speak, you can sing, you can share more about what the things that you're learning and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So
So
that's it.
sort of the power of communication and connecting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. It came up a lot on the panel that I was moderating with 4 teachers, and it was just, a lot of them using WhatsApp, using Skype, using these tools just to connect kids to situations outside of their own world as well. Was quite a powerful one.
Yeah, I do agree. Especially right now when we confine our students inside the 4 walls of our classroom.
Mm-hmm.
We literally say that classes happen inside the classroom. When in fact, technology should be breaking those walls.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I love communicating with other people, collaborating with other people. That's one thing. Like, we're in a global education skills forum. The only way to go is to go global, globally connected.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, it's been wonderful to connect with you. If people want to find out more, Jim, where's the best way for them? Are you on Twitter or?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter. It's at Jim Tuscano. I can be reached via email, francisbtuscano@gmail.com. And I have a website. It's francisjimtoscano.com. So,
Okay,
yeah.
francisjimtoscano.com. And are you looking for any collaborators in particular at the moment? So if people are listening in.
Oh, yeah. So I have an award-winning project by 100.org.
Okay, yeah.
So my project, it's called Kids Can Innovation Camp. It was recognized as one of the 10 inspiring education innovations for K-12, focusing on sustainability. So I have a global innovation camp that should be happening in a few months. So that's the second year of doing it.
Okay.
If they want to know more, they can email me or tweet me. But there's a project website to it. It's called kidscanproject.weebly.com.
Okay, kids.project.weebly.com. And who would you be looking for to come to this? Would it be other educators? Would it be people to sponsor it? Or
Okay, so K-12 educators are open. If there are people who are open to sponsoring it, that would be good. We're bringing a lot. We're not just bringing collaboration. We have a great framework that focuses on the UN Global Goals or SDGs, integrating PBL, STEAM, and Makerspace.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sophie.
Yeah, it was fantastic to have you in the audience today. For our listeners, you talked a little bit about what your work entails. What are your main goals and what are your hopes in terms of coming to the event today? Who are you hoping to connect with? And, in the next 6 months, what's the kind of main thing that's keeping you up at night?
So we've come all the way from Kenya to this global forum in education because we largely are an organization that is trying to empower children. And for sure there's nothing better than education in that matter. Specifically, what we are presenting as an opportunity for collaboration are 2 matters. One is a scholar leadership program. I will explain a bit of that, and my colleague Edward will say more. And then we have a community innovation challenge fund. Basically, what we train our children that we come across with and those who work with children is to prepare children to be problem solvers. And we know, at least in my country, in the continent, that's been missing, that people are prepared to look for a job rather than to solve problems. And how we do that is we have a platform where we bring together associates. So you can be an associate at African Institute for Children's Studies. meaning you're an expert who is available to train other people, but also to learn from others. And through that, we link you to some young people, children, and you support them to build their skills around how to be leaders and how to solve problems. We've done this in the country in the last 10 years that we've been registered. Previously, we simply, out of 10% of money that we make from our social enterprise, we supported children from low-income households to remain in school. But we want to say it's got to be more than just saying, hallelujah, I'm in school.
Yeah.
Can you learn to give back, irrespective of your status? Can you learn that you can solve problems back in your community? So we have this program that we're doing with GEMS School in Nairobi, where we, and among other schools in the Maasai community, a host of about 20 children, 10 girls, 10 boys, who will support them throughout their lifetime to remain in school, but more importantly, to go back to their community and address a problem. And here we are inviting other schools globally. We already talking to some schools in Switzerland, James Cambridge, like I've talked about, in Nairobi, and some potential schools in the US. And we are open. Basically, is to pair children with this child from the Maasai community, go back to your school, your community, and solve something. This is within our larger program of doing an innovation challenge, because again, there are many issues that affect communities. We can't wait for people from other continents or, someone to come and solve it.
Yeah.
Can we train our children to do that?
So it's really a project-based learning approach. And what are some of those issues that you would like your young learners to be passionate about solving?
Again, we come from a premise of participatory approach to child development. So we really don't want to be prescriptive, but I'll give you some examples. We've worked with this young girl from Dandora slums, informal settlement in Nairobi, and she's been supported, and she thought, why don't I do something about access to sanitary pads for girls in her neighborhood? But even beyond that, to give some education to other girls on how to use sanitary pads, because that's also missing, the hygiene issues around that. And so we link her up to a mentor who is a public health expert. She volunteers her time to go and train her, work with her. How do you pass this information during times when she has break, weekends, and those kind of moments? So ultimately, she's learning how to give back. The community then learns. So it will be really up to any child. Maybe someone will say, I want to plant trees. Maybe someone will say, I want to address female genital cutting. That is happening in the Maasai community. So it's not for us to tell them what to do, because we think that is part of leadership development.
Yeah. Amazing. Yes. Have you seen any of your students sort of going up through that program, and have they become adults yet, or is it still, I think you said it's been going for 10 years, is that right?
Yes, we've existed for 10 years and we've been doing capacity building. We've done the education fund, where we supported children from 10% of our net income in social enterprise. But that was it. You will get a one-off support, and there was nothing else. So beginning this year, now that's how we bring on board James Cambridge School in Nairobi. We want now, and seeking out other partners.
Okay, so any schools listening in can be
yes,
partners.
They can reach out to us, and we'll sign up really both at school level, at individual. But of course, like anything, you want to begin carefully. So we'll do a pilot of 20 children in Kenya. We don't mind if we pair or what do you call it when there are 3 or 4? Foursome them.
Yeah, no, sure. You have to be careful with these things.
Yes. So they may be for children, but we're trying to also break, prejudices around these continents, race, and everything else.
Yeah.
So we hope if we can have one child from America joining in, another one from the UK.
It's kind of what the teacher from Japan was talking about, having this ability to go beyond your physical setting as well, and kind of, bring different cultures and kind of conversations together.
That's right. And ultimately, they can fundraise together. They'll be linked up to a mentor, and our pool of mentors really are cutting across. So that's another opportunity. We're looking for anyone who, of course, will do a background check to make sure that, child protection or child safety is ensured through this process. But once you get into our associate pool, you can be among those who can mentor another child or this group of children to do something about it.
Okay.
Yes.
So what I was going to ask your colleague here, who asked a fantastic question in our session, was, what's the role of technology in all of this? And, how can we make sure that it's technology for good?
Well, Like we said before, technology is so good, and but we need to let our children know that there are bad things that are happening, and they need to be very careful. So that brings about the question of how do we ensure that we bring technology in education at the same time, keep our children safe. So at the moment, as an organization, what we are doing, we are implementing a project called, with other partners, of course, called Online Child Sexual Exploitation under online safety, where we go to schools and give them a session-based curriculum training on how they can be safe, basically from the point of understanding that they can be at risk, and prevention, what they can do to prevent themselves from being at risk, responding, and even being supportive of the victims of online safety issues. Yeah.
Okay, and then so people listening in, so you're looking for mentors, you're looking for potential other schools, but in the first instance in a kind of pilot environment. What are your kind of goals longer term? Like what would you love to see come out of this project?
What we want to see is to have, children understand, because we're not going to tell any child and parent out there not to support their children accessing these gadgets. But we want them to understand how to be responsible while they are using the online platform. What we are looking in the long term is to have partners to take this gospel forward so that we can make our children. Because remember, when we do check even the comparative studies, we don't have a clear place where we can look upon and say, this is how these things are done. We are just looking at people out there doing it, and we tell people, can we advise each other on how we can make our children be safe online?
I will add to really a question you asked in the long term. So what do we want to see? This is why we're launching the African Innovation Challenge Fund, because one, we believe in a rights-based approach where everyone has to be empowered to be able to look, first of all, within themselves, to protect themselves and develop themselves. So in this case, we want to empower children. In the case of online safety, you cannot police the internet enough, never. And there's a mentor that out there, your child will make a decision at some point, whether they're 18, they're 25, and you will not be there. How can you be sure that they'll make the right decision? It depends on how you empower them. So we are looking at that, and we are looking at a society where children grow up to be innovators, to be problem solvers. And so this is where we are inviting a very long-term partnership in doing this. We're already reaching out to other groups, including African Leadership Academy, and really trying to empower people to look around them, solve matters.
Where did your funding come from at the moment? Is it a government project or?
Over the last 10 years, we've funded our projects from a social enterprise.
Yeah.
So we have really good team that can do evaluations, can do training. So if you're out there and you're looking for business process outsourcing, if you want to introduce a product within the community, and you want a feasibility study, you don't need to come and do it. You can involve us, and some of that money goes into supporting children.
Okay.
But we're just beginning now to get into some funded projects with Terre des Hommes, for example, in Netherlands, and Open Society Initiative, addressing mental health issues, which are really big gaps. Yes, we're interested in anything. You can come in on board as long as we are within trying to address child protection and improving child development.
And do you partner with people like Edtech Nairobi? Do you know?
We haven't worked with Edtech Nairobi. I know in Nairobi, for example, we've worked with Nairobites, but more from a consultant point, where we've supported them to review how they work with children in the streets, children, and support them to be better. How can you develop models of what are most effective? So we, in summary, we call ourselves the soft side. We develop the software of child protection. What do you call this place in the US where you develop technology?
Like an accelerator?
Yes. We are the Silicon Valley on children, really.
Yeah.
So that's the place we want to be known. And we really increasingly get into that space because of the kind of people we have. Because we want to influence policymakers. We want to be able to support African Union and those teams that are making those decisions. And we are there because we support civil societies to empower them within the SDG.
And so if people want to find out more, what's the best place for them to go? They
can check out our website, www.institutechild.org. studies.org.
Okay.
And of course, they can find our contacts, and we'd be very willing to set up time.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
So I'm here with Aaron Friedland from Simbi in Vancouver. So welcome.
Thanks, Sophie.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. We finally connected. It's one of those things where you're trying to chase each other down over the last sort of 48 hours. And I believe it was Jamie Brooker that put us in contact, so...
Yeah, he did. So Jamie's been advising Simbi and the team and I for the last 8 months. And he is the most incredible human being who has really helped us put students and put the learner first. He's got a beautiful learner-centric approach, and it's just been an honor to work with him.
We were just sort of singing his praises together. Well, can you tell our listeners a little bit about Simbi and your work there? And then we can go on to some of the other projects we were talking about before as well.
For sure. So when you think about Simbi, well, first we should start with literacy and reading, because that's really what Simbi does. Simbi helps people fall in love with reading. And Simbi was developed largely from my experiences as a child with dyslexia, struggling learning to read and really not being able to navigate the learning ecosystem. And some of my early teachers noticed that I couldn't read particularly well and had suggested that I should read a book and simultaneously listen to the audio recording. And so this bimodal approach of reading while listening is understood to be the most effective way to learn how to read. And it turns out that reading while listening worked pretty well for me, and over the course of using this methodology for a big part of my elementary school and then later high school, I was able to go off to university despite early teachers telling my parents that I very likely wouldn't. And today I'm doing a PhD in economics, looking at the impact of reading while listening. And this reading while listening approach is a core piece of Simbi. And with it, over, I guess, the last few months, we've been able to partner with the United Nations, with National Geographic, and with Pratham Books, India's largest publishing house. And when you think about reading while listening, one of the questions is, well, how do you make content available to be read while listened to? And so what we've done is we've developed a platform that enables people to create or to consume content. So when we think of reading while listening, that would be consuming content. Creating content is a process whereby people read books out loud. And when they read a book out loud, Simbi takes their voice and text and amalgamates it to create these engaging audiovisual books that then people around the world can read while listening to. And so what's been really beautiful about this journey with Simbi is two quite interesting things happen when you read a book out loud. So the first thing is that when you read a book out loud and when you understand that this book is going to be consumed by, let's say, 90,000 children in a UNHCR refugee settlement, like the Bidi Bidi refugee settlement, where Simbi is a partner with the UN, or in communities across Uganda, India, or even in Vancouver and communities in Scandinavia. When you read out loud for good, students are really motivated because they understand the impact, the social impact that their voice can have. But the other thing that's quite interesting is that when you read out loud, using speech recognition, we're able to show students how their literacy is improving. And when we think about the current climate of technology, we require instant gratification. We need to see how we're improving immediately. We like to see that like. We like to see, we're just used to it. And so when you're able to show a child or a student how their word correct per minute, as an example, is improving over time, you're able to really motivate them to read more. But you're also able to provide teachers and parents with this data. And so in doing so, you're able to help a parent or a teacher be more meaningfully involved in a student's literacy journey. And when they are better equipped to understand if a child has dyslexia, if a child is simply struggling, confusing their lowercase b's and d's, what sort of direct personalized help you can do to support that learner. And it's been a very interesting process building this.
And how long has Simbi been going for?
So Simbi has been around for 11 months.
11 months, wow. And how many users do you have at the moment, or how many learners are on the platform?
So we have 12,000 learners at the moment, and we're looking to scale quite quickly. And a big part of that has actually been, sorry Jamie, I have to keep singing your praises here, but has really been Jamie's push to put the learner first and to realize it doesn't matter. You can build all the dashboards for teachers that you want, but if the child does not enjoy interacting with the program, if they're not passionate about it, and if they're not motivated to keep going back, then the parents aren't going to be requesting it, and the teachers aren't really going to be motivated to keep using it.
And so, in the refugee camp context of this, is this all done through smartphone? I did an interview previously with a researcher that was doing a lot of edtech in sort of refugee camps and that kind of thing. And he was also sort of saying to challenge this assumption that people don't have smartphones. And, it's not necessarily always the case. So I was just interested in how people are accessing, needing to upload their content or consume it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, in terms of the refugee settlements, you will see 80% to 100% cell phone penetration, sometimes even higher than that. Sometimes people in the refugee settlement will have 1 or 2 cell phones. And so they're definitely prevalent. Smartphones, not always as widely prevalent as you may think. The way that we get around that is we've developed a kind of innovative approach where we use these Raspberry Pi microcomputers. And what we do is once a month, all of the content on Simbi's online library is downloaded and saved on an offline library. And it's put onto all of these microcomputers. And then what happens is all of the schools that have these microcomputers, they're now able, all of their tablets, all of the cell phones, all of the technology in the school is able to connect directly to that microcomputer's intranet, which is the localized intranet that this computer emits. So these schools don't have to pay a monthly fee for the content. And more importantly, there isn't any negative externalities or negative unintended consequences of having the internet, of having the World Wide Web, because earlier through previous trials, what we had seen was if you provide a school with internet, teachers get quite excited about the prospect of email and Facebook and other things that we can't control just yet. So we focus on an offline intranet system, and that's how it's currently deployed.
Very interesting. And so I think you mentioned that the schools don't have to pay anything.
Yeah.
So how are you kind of funding this at the moment? Is it through working with sort of NGO partners and that kind of thing in terms of funding?
Yeah, so actually I should qualify that. So in the refugee settlements and in the partner communities across Uganda and India, the schools don't pay. But we have schools across the US and Canada that do pay. And we also have parents that pay.
Okay.
So parents pay $10 a month to follow their child's literacy journey, and a dashboard shows them pretty brilliant insights. Also, a parent is able, for example, to read a book out loud so that their child can read while listening to it. Or one of the things that the parents enjoy the most, and my favorite feature, is something called Read with Friends. And so what that is you can take a book, let's say a Rudyard Kipling's Rikki Tikki Tavi, as an example. And you can say, okay, I want to read this book. And rather than just clicking read out loud, you'll click read with friends. And now you can invite as many pages as there are in that book, you can invite a friend to read. And now each of you can read that page out loud. And then it comes together as this audiovisual book that people can now read while listening to. And so we see a lot of families really enjoying engaging in this process of collectively reading a book out loud and then sharing it with their grandparents or other members.
Yeah. That's what I imagine, like the kind of wider family reading grandchildren and that kind of thing. It was interesting that you mentioned there because do you know Yoto Play? Have you come across that?
Yoto Play?
Yeah,
no,
so
it's
like a screenless device for early years and beyond that. So it comes with like a card. Most of them are preloaded with content. So, for example, they've got a partnership with the Roald Dahl estate and that kind of thing. And so a child will then put that card into a box and it will sort of play content and stories and music. And so it's meant to be kind of like a podcast for children, but it's screenless, so it's not too distracting as we were talking about. But one of the cards you can kind of do exactly that, so you can preload content onto it or... Yeah, so I was just thinking maybe you guys should have a chat. Some interesting crossovers there. And then what we talked about before, A Tale Unfolds, and also Pobble in the UK are doing some interesting work around literacy. I think a lot of this is about the power of sharing, isn't it? So it's like the content isn't just static. You're not just listening to other people reading. You're involved, or there's those familiar voices that have that higher resonance in your life. And then the ability to kind of change and share your work as a child with everyone around the world seems to have this really interesting effect.
That's exactly it. And something that we think is really quite important is when you look at essentially humanity's tendency towards illiteracy right now, for the first time in history, we have higher income countries experiencing increasing rates of illiteracy, which is really problematic. And when you think about this, you realize, well, something has to change, right? Because we're losing our habit, we're losing the power of reading. And when we think about the word Homo sapiens, or us being wise people, we really are this way because of literacy and because of our ability to read. And so what we see is over the last 5,000 years, reading really hasn't changed much. And being able to provide students and provide people with a new medium to actually engage in this activity and to become increasingly motivated to read is crucial, because we will lose it. And so if you can start combining things like read with friends, network effects, if you can also just make the process of reading a little bit easier by having this bimodal activity of reading while listening, then we can start to rebuild that habit of reading. And it's something that, we're really passionate about doing.
And you were sort of saying before about how some of the stories that have come about are being collected and put in a book and published. So can you sort of tell us how that's come about and who that's in partnership with as well?
For sure. So one of the things that we do is one of SIMBY's partners is called the Walking School Bus. It's a really amazing nonprofit organization. And what the Walking School Bus will do is they work across Uganda and India. And what we'll do is we will work with students in refugee settlements or children at, let's say, the Himalayan Public School in rural Uttarakhand, northern India. And these children will work with Ruchi Shah, and that's the Walking School Bus's art director. And she gets them to draw the most beautiful illustrations that are relevant to their location, where they're from. And Ruchi will have a manuscript that's already been written. And so she'll tell the children what these stories are and what this manuscript is about. And then over a period of time, these children just draw the most beautiful illustrations that then actually become these really great books that get published in partnership with Pratham Books, which is India's largest publishing house, and then are put onto SIMBY and are read out loud by, often by the children who have helped to illustrate these books, so that they can then be read while listened to. And one of the things that's so beautiful about this whole process, and something that I'm the most proud of when it comes to SIMBY, and one of the reasons that we've partnered with National Geographic, is that every single unit, every single book in SIMBY is uploaded as what we call a discrete unit. And what that means is that every single book can be read out loud by every single user on SIMBY. And every single user is able to set their accent type and their location. And so these children in northern India, in Uttarakhand, they are able to say where they're from. And then another child in that community, they can choose to read while listening to this book. And they don't have to listen to a British accent or a South African accent or my Canadian South African accent. They can listen to an accent that they're familiar with. And through multivariate randomized control trials that are part of my PhD and a part of some amazing research that we're working on, what we see is that being able to read while listen, when it's in an accent that you're familiar with, significantly increases motivation and subsequently fluency gains, which we track in something called word correct per minute, which is how we objectively track fluency gains.
Very, very interesting. When you were talking there, so I, a long time ago, ran the London Marathon, and like one of the joys of that is, you're running and you just hear all of these different voices and these different dialects. There's a real richness in that. And you mentioned that you've got some interesting people reading.
So Julian Lennon, that's John Lennon's son, has offered to read books out loud with us. And we've got a few other well-known creators and well-known artists, musicians, who have offered to read books out loud. And so now we're just in the process of finalizing which books they're actually going to be narrating for us. And in the next month and a half or so, we should be releasing some of those initial books.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So, and maybe we can actually get you to read a book out loud at some point as well.
Yeah, I'd love to read a book. If I would go onto the App Store, can I download SIMBY there?
So no, right now it's a web-based app.
Okay, yeah.
The reason that we've done it this way is purely accessibility in mind. Also, it's interesting. I'm not sure if you've spoken to other app creators out there, but in the US and I guess across North America, there's a little bit of uncertainty with what's happening between Android and iPad really dominating the classroom market. And so being as young as we are and being as focused on impact as we are, we didn't want to develop a native Android or iOS device and not be able to scale impact in these refugee settlements. So what we've been doing is we've developed it as a web base that works beautifully on both platforms. And then as soon as we have a little more understanding in terms of whether iOS or Android's going to win or raise more money, we'll start developing the native apps as well.
Well, and so in the next sort of 6 months to a year, what is kind of the main focus? Is there a sort of funding element to that? If people are listening in, who can help out? What kind of partnerships are you looking for?
That is a brilliant question. A few partnerships. So we're looking to raise another $1 million. So that's something that will be very helpful. And actually, $100,000 is allocated directly for scaling SIMBI in the refugee settlements. So after we've done a series of randomized control trials, and we see that it vastly improving student fluency, as much as 2x in as little as 3 months. So it's quite substantial. And so now we're looking to allocate a lot of the funding to make sure that we can further help another 90,000 refugees, students in the bitty refugee settlements. So that's a funding piece. We're always looking for more people let's say you're a researcher and you're interested in validating some of our data, you're interested in helping to run trials. We'd love additional researchers working with us. We're always looking for people who are passionate narrators who want to read books out loud with SIMBI and help actually create impact. How else could you support? We're also growing our team. So if you're just passionate about literacy and you're a solid UX designer, a brilliant developer, come talk to us.
Okay, wonderful. And best way for people to get in contact or find out what you're doing?
They can reach me directly at aaron@simbi.io.
Okay.
And you can check out simbi.io to read books for good and positively support people around the world.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Aaron.
Thank you, Sophie.